we are going to be sewing up the pattern I altered last week. It is the Itched Stitch Mountain View pull-on jean. I made quite a few alterations for my particular figure type, which is a full behind. Okay, for this project, because I am testing a pattern, I'm sewing up my stash. I have a scrap that I'm using for the pocket linings, and if I had enough, I would also use it for the inside of the waistband because it's cute, and it also just cuts down on some of that bulkiness of all the denim. This is a piece of denim that I've had in my stash for years and years and years. It's a very nice weight. I pre-shrank it, so it's been washed, and it's nice and soft, but it also still has a really good weight. I can tell I cut something out of it at one point because there's a notch out of it. And can you see where it was folded on the bolt a long time ago? There's a little line right down the center. So I'm going to be careful when I'm cutting that I don't get that line in anything if possible, but I'm going to go ahead and start laying out. The thing I'm cutting out of this is, I'm going to start with my pocket facing. I think I can do it. I think I can get the waistband out of this. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, and once I cut the pocket facing, I'm going to open it up and I'll cut one front waistband and one back waistband out of this. Hooray! So now that I've figured out I have enough fabric to get not only my pocket facing, but also my waistbands, I've been looking at it, and I think I have enough to get the actual front pocket out of it also. Now the front pocket shows, the jean cuts away and you see a little piece of the front pocket. However, they have included a little piece, a little yoke piece to go over it. So you can cut as well as the pocket facing and the pocket so that you go back and cut the front yoke out of the denim. You won't see it, but the lightweight pocket will be just a little bit below and it will give you just a little less bulk in there. So I am going to do that. So pleased that I have. It's amazing how far this little scrap is going to go. All right, let's talk grain line. I am laying out my biggest piece first, which is my center back piece here, which has the big crotch alteration that I've made. And then in any little spaces, I'm putting in the small pieces, but keeping everything on grain. Have you ever bought a pair of jeans that twisted around your leg when you wore them or just hung weird? It's because they were cut off of grain. And denim has, not only is the grain important, but it actually has a nap. So I'm making sure that I don't flip pattern pieces top to bottom. That will also change the look, unless you're really going for that look, like you want it to look like two different kinds of denim. This pattern, because it has so many interesting seams, you could easily mix your fabrics and have lots of different denims mixed together, which would be really cute. This piece here, when on grain, see how angular it's going to be when cut on grain? So I'm going to roll my fabric up and put on my next two big pieces. I'll show you how that looks. Because I stole from myself sometime in the past and have this little hole here, this pant leg is ending right on it. So I'm just getting that in. Everything else is on except for these waistbands and the back pocket. I'm pretty sure I can get a waistband in this area and down here. And I may have to cut my pockets out separately on the fold in this little section to get my pockets. We'll find out. It's gonna be close. All right, this is all that's left of my fabric, and I still need to get one front waistband and one back waistband out. So let me show you what I've decided to do. I'm going to get my front waistband out of this, and I'm going to have to put a seam in my back waistband in order to get one. I'm just going to have to. So I'm going to cut out two waistbands with a little seam allowance so I can sew them together and make it one again. I don't have any other way to get it out. I just don't have a piece of fabric big enough to get a whole front and back. So front, I'm going to leave solid, and back I will put a seam in. I considered putting a seam in the front because it does have the faux stitching for the zipper. So I did kind of consider that too. That was option number 2, but I think I'm going to do it this way. I think I'm going to be happier. all cut out. I've got my serger set up and my sewing machine set up for just regular sewing. Because this is my first time making this pattern and I'm doing a lot of fitting with it, I'm not going to sew 100% straight through the directions. I'm going to do a few things early on for fit and then go back and do some top stitching and things, because I don't want to top stitch and get it completely in and find I need to do a little alterations. But we will be starting, if you look at the directions on page 11, we're starting with the pocket in the front because the front has a cutaway and we have to get that little yoke pocket piece on to complete the front pocket. So we are going to do that. So we're going to take our pocket pieces here and our pant front. Here's our front pant and we have this facing. We're going to pin, sorry, I know the pattern is so loud, which is this, right sides together to our front pant. It's going to look like this, and we're just going to stitch this little curvy part, and then we'll clip, flip, and press. Okay, so we're going to sew this little piece to both front pockets first. So that's where we're going to start. Remember, 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm using my even feed foot. I often sew with the even feed foot because it just makes life easier. Looks like this at the sewing machine. We're just going to sew this little curve. Alright, so this is how it looks. And then this is going to flip around and face that pocket. So now it's all finished off. But for that to do that, we need to clip in this curve so that it turns nicely, and you clip up to but not through the stitches. So we're going to do a bunch of little clips around here. Now this is a place where I'm not going to have a lot of alterations, so I'm not real worried about doing this part. I know this is going to be okay. We're going to flip this around and press it, and then this is a place, if you're top stitching, and I am, where you're going to top stitch. I will be switching back and forth my thread a lot because I'm going to sew it together in a blue, in a navy, but I want to top stitch it in denim gold. So I will be going back and forth with my top thread. I'm leaving the bobbin thread alone. So let's trim and press both of these and top stitch it in. I'm going to just lay this down. I'm pressing right now all of the seam allowance up towards the little pocket piece. I'll show you how my clips look. There's no reason to serge this. This is going to be completely enclosed, so I'm not even going to worry about overlocking any of that. Now that I've given this a little press, steam is good to the other side. And the thing that we really want to make sure when we press this is that we have just the tiniest bit of our denim showing, and that's going to make sure that our pocket lining does not crawl back up and show through. So I'm gonna, that's how it looks pressed, and can you just see the little tiny bit of denim rolling to the back ever so slightly? But now when I flip this over and I top stitch it, see, you won't see any of that shadowing through. I'm ready to top stitch. You can do a single top stitch line, you can double top stitch next to each other, you can put in a twin needle with 2 top stitching threads. My bobbin is just regular polyester sewing thread, but on the top I have a 30 weight cotton, technically an embroidery thread. This is for top stitching. I want it to show, and they do make an even heavier thread that's meant for denim top stitching that's a little heavier than this one. That looks great, and it comes in a couple different shades of gold and khaki that you can also buy. I don't have any of that right now. This color though I have used before for jeans and I do like it. So I'm going to go ahead and do my top stitching. When top stitching, I personally like a little bit longer stitch, so a 3 to 3.5. because it's supposed to show, and I always start because this top stitching is actually going to get caught in the side seam. So I'm just really watching my line here. And if you have to like pivot, make sure you sink that needle. Keep you from getting a little hiccup in your top stitch. Again, if you have an even feed foot, a great time to use it. So there is first line of top stitching, and you could just have this single line. I could come back and make a shorter, or make one that's narrower in here if I want to. I don't know if I want to or not. I like the way that looks, just like that. And on the back side, I have the dark navy in there, and it just sort of disappears. So if you're following along on the pattern, we have done step 1, we have done step 2, and now we're ready for step 3. We're going to take our piece 8 and our piece 10. We're going to lay one on top of the other. They show zigzagging it on. What I'm going to do is serge this edge first and then stitch it on. It's just neater looking. I've switched to thread that matches my serging thread because I'm being super nitpicky. And I'm going to stitch right along this needle line, straight stitch, to attach these two to each other. It looks like this. Just to make it nice and tidy, I may come back and do another one. I don't want this rolling up on the edge, which is what a zigzag is good for. It keeps this from rolling up, but I want to get this stitched down and looking pretty first. So 3 is done. Looks like this on mine because I did the overlock. So you can see it's just got a little bit of an edge there, but completely disappears. So now we're going to slip that behind our pocket front that we've stitched. And this is going to slide right behind it. So I'm going to lay this down. See how that's going to fill in that piece right there, and then inside it looks like that, which I love. I think that's so cute. But the next step we're going to do is we're going to actually sew just the pocket part together, and we're going to get these 2 pocket pieces together, and we're just going to serge that up. We're going to serge around the pocket, independent of everything else, just this edge of the pocket, the 2 pieces together, all the way up. So I'm going to serge those pieces, and then we'll be ready to baste everything together in the waistline. Here's how the front pocket is looking now. We have serged around just the bottom part. So here's how the inside looks. We're now going to line everything up nice and flat, and I'm going to, you can put some pins in it, but I'm going to run just a basting stitch kind of up high to hold this together on the side seam and up at the waist, just to keep things nice and neat, and then I don't have to worry about keeping pins in it, so that we can move on to the next step. And it actually does show you doing some basting up here. You want to do it just inside the 1/2 inch so that you don't have to worry about pulling them out later when you go to put on your waistband, etc. So we're going to do those stitches. Now that we've done all of the pocket stuff, we are now ready to sew this little front crotch piece. Now normally when I do pants, I sew the inseam together first and then do the whole crotch second, so that you have one nice continuous seam. It's a little more comfortable on the body. They're going to have you do front and back crotch and then do the whole inseam together, which also works. It feels a little different on the body, but we're top stitching things down, which will help make it smooth and soft, so that helps. There is a pattern, there's a marking on your pattern up here in the little waistband, and that's where you're going to start stitching. So I'm going to start right here, and if you need to, go ahead and make your markings all the way down for this. So remember, this is 1/2 inch down here, so if you need to, make those markings to follow so you can just top stitch right along. I went ahead and marked them on mine just now so you can see how that would look. We're going to just sew along this really quickly. Make sure you backstitch top and bottom. Now that I've stitched that, I'm going to go ahead and just serge this together. I'm just going to go around this outer edge and serge it, because this is going to get flipped over and top stitched, but I want all of this seam finished first. So if you look, this is where we're at. Here we are, and then it shows seam finishing. That's what I'm doing next. And then it shows flipping it back to top stitch. So let's get step 7 done, and then I'll show you next. All right, I'm sewn together and I'm pressed. And if you look at how this is, you're going to be pushing all of this stuff. So as we're facing it, this is the left and this is the right. So all of your seam allowance is going to be on the right side as you're looking down on it, so that we can do this top stitching and then do the fake fly. That is why this is back here. If you just top stitch this without that extra piece of fabric, it looks fake. It doesn't look as genuine. With that extra fabric back there, the weight of that actually just changes the way it looks, and it looks better. So they've left it in because they know we need it to make this look better. So I'm going to edge stitch. Edge stitching is right along the edge. Over here you can see I've come over about 3/8 of an inch, but here it's going to be much closer, like this. So can you see, here's the edge of my fabric. This is more like 1/8 of an inch over. I smell something. I think my husband's cooking. It smells delicious. I may be quitting because delicious food is happening. Okay, can you see the stitching right back there? You can see it right through the foot. That's how it looks. That's my edge stitch. So here's my edge stitch. Pretty, pretty. Now we're going to draw where our flap is in the back to top stitch over that, and this can be double stitch, so you can have stitch your first line and then come back like 1/8 of an inch over and stitch again. Often the fly will have double stitching because they just take so much wear and tear. Stitching and do our first row. And make sure you mark with something that will wash out. Here's how the back of that fly will look. And here's the front. I still have my marking. I'll have to get rid of that in a minute, but there's a single stitching line. And do I want to go back and do a second one or not? I'm looking at how they did it. What they did is they actually did one that starts out here and merges back in. I don't love the look of that, though. You do see that a lot. It'll end up with like a little tacking stitch or something like right about here. After that, they have us going to work on our backs. We are going to take our center back, which is the piece with the crotch in it, and our side back, and we're going to line them up on that back seam and sew them together. And what I did for myself, because that side back piece kind of looks the same top to bottom, left to right, it's just curvy. So I marked a W in the top corner of the waist on the seam line. So I knew I was matching this to the waist top corner of the other piece. So I'm going to pin these together, and I'm going to sew this at the sewing machine on my 1/2 inch, and then I'm just going to serge that edge. One thing with denim as a rule is it really frays, and if you're going to be working on this for many days in a row, be really cautious with this because you could start losing some fabric. It could start coming apart on you. So I'm going to pin at the very top and at the very bottom because this is going to be a long seam. If I change the leg of this, if I make it narrower, it will be on the in and out seam. It will not be on that back seam in the along the back of the pant. There's some curve in there. It's fit. It's in the rear. So you want to make sure you allow for that. And it shows that in the picture on the directions too. If you look at step 13, it kind of shows how there's going to be a little bit of fullness there when you go to put these two together. Seam, I'm going to sew both of those real quick and serge them, and then we will be ready. I'm going to stop soon and come back again tomorrow. I think I am going to stop here. So after this, I will see you tomorrow to start working on the yoke. I'm going to look different. So anyway, let's get this sewn and serged. Good morning. So today I'm going to finish putting the pants together and do a quick try on. That's the first thing. So we're going to go ahead, before doing any of the top stitching, I'm going to attach, just at the sewing machine, I'm not serging, I'm going to attach my yoke to the backs, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew the pants together, side seams and inseams, so I can slip them on and see the first fit, because I know for certain I don't want the leg so wide. I don't want that wide leg. So I definitely am going to pin in that leg during this fitting and see how the hip, rear, all of that fits, to see if there's any changes I need to make, and then we'll get back to sewing step by step. The next part is to take our backs and find my yoke piece. It's smaller at the top and a little wider at the bottom. The wider part is where it's going to attach to the jean. And the narrow part is at the side seam. The wider part is in the center back of the waist. So we're going to line this up with our pant. So we're just going to sew these right sides together. There should be a tiny bit of ease, or at least it appears that there is, which is good, because a yoke is a fitting mechanism as well as looking super cute. I'm just going to stitch it on really quick so that I can tell fit. So right now I'm just doing this for fit purposes because I really want to come back and top stitch everything without it completely constructed. So I'm going to go to a longer stitch now. I'm going to just baste these. These are being basted specifically for fit purposes. So we're going to put both yokes on. And then we're going to kind of baste the whole pant together. So there's the yoke. Then we'll baste everything together and we'll do a fit. So when after I get this done, I'm going to baste my back crotch, baste the side seams, baste the inseam, so it's all basted, and we're gonna go do a quick fit. Then I'm gonna take it apart and finish walking you through step by step. So I'll be back in a few minutes with everything basted together for my fit check. So I'm sewing this up and I'm looking at the back of this. So here's the side back and here's the center back. And I'm looking at my alteration that I made, which the measurements are right, but I am just looking at this thinking that looks so wrong. And I know this is so wide. It's just way too big. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish basting and try it on, but I have a feeling I've made a mistake, or I should have put this in length and not in depth. I'm not sure. But I can tell it doesn't look right. Ignore the nail polish splatters on the mirror. I'm going to do my best to show you. It actually looks better in person than it does on the mirror, but the fit is actually coming out about like I was hoping. I'm kind of surprised. Like there's not a lot of pulls. You don't have a lot of striated lines through there. I did not change the front at all. Let's see if I can show my backside. It fits really good. Okay, so the leg is a little wide, a little wider than I want, and it's a little long. It's not bad though. I thought it was gonna be worse. Wide legs are really in, and I'm tempted to leave these this wide and then thin out the black pair that I'm getting ready to make. I'm really pleased. Okay, so now if I wanna thin the leg out, I know I need to take a little bit on the ends, probably a little out of both, just to get a little bit more of a narrow leg. Not too narrow, but a little bit narrower. Okay, I'm pleased. I'm gonna finish sewing these up. So I'm gonna take these apart and go ahead and sew them up according to the directions so I can get all the top stitching. Let me show you the waist up here. This is a little high on me. This is just about, because I'm so short-waisted in the front compared to the back. Here's my belly button. Right here. Here's my belly button. So there's this much, there'll be half an inch turned down. So it's still high in the front, but because it's elasticized, it'll be more comfortable. Not bad. I'm pretty pleased. I will say, because you can see how it fits pretty well in the waist. I did not change the waist at all, but because I am so big in the hip, it was a little hard to get on and off. I almost need to increase the waist just to make it easier to pull on and off. Because this doesn't have a zipper. The other thing I could do, it doesn't have a zipper in it. I could put a zipper in the side, do like a little hidden zipper, and it still be sort of elasticized. You can see this is where my problem always is I have a gappy back, but it won't be in these because it's gonna have elastic. All right, back to sewing. Okay, 20 minutes later of seam ripping, and I'm back to having everything apart. I've sewn on the yoke to the back, and I'm going to go ahead and serge that, and then we're going to top stitch. So if you're following with the directions, this is steps 14, 15. I'm going to say to you that before you sew the yoke on, you could go ahead and top stitch this seam. I'm not sure why they waited to top stitch it until they put the yoke on. I would top stitch it first if I weren't following straight by their directions, but either way it works. So I'm going to go ahead and serge, and then we're going to top stitch all of these back pieces, and then we're going to start putting everything together. Again, this time not with a basting stitch. Speaking of that, I'm going to reset my machine real quick. Now these are basted in right now. I'm going to go ahead and permanent sew them and serge the seam allowance. After that, I'm going to go reshape my back leg, the center part, and transfer that information to the pattern, so for the next pair it will be done, because it's just too wide. It's also a little long, though if I wanted to always wear these pants with like a heel or a heel boot or something, it'd be about the right length. This is after I've made the little alteration, and I've got my pretty stitching on here. I'm really pleased with all the top stitching. It's so cute. I just think it really looks adorable. So now I'm on to step 16, right sides together. We're gonna do our back crotch line, which is this. So we're gonna sew this together, and then we're gonna do just like we did in the front. We're gonna, after we sew it and do our seam finish, we're gonna top stitch it too. Then we're ready to actually put the pants together. All right, I am altering the inside of the pant leg, just the inner back pants, or the center back on the inseam. I'm taking out some of that fullness, which is where it was added, and it's actually, I'm taking out pretty much exactly what I added in down here at the hem. So it's 2 inches up here, and then I'm easing it back out because I do need all of this up here at the crotch. So This is it on the actual pant. This is me transferring it to the pattern so that next time I won't have to do this. It'll be just right. A little tip to make sewing easier for you when you're putting your pants together. This is my front crotch, and you can see the direction that I have my seam allowance, and it's top stitched. And I did the back crotch the opposite. So when they meet here like this, instead of having all of those seams on top of each other, can you see how they go opposite directions? And it makes it flatter, it's more comfortable to wear, it's easier to sew. So I'm going to top stitch this one so that the seam top stitching goes the opposite direction. The only place that it meets is right down here under the crotch where no one can see it anyway, and it makes your sewing and your comfort much better. All right, we are to step 18, and at step 18 we're going to start pinning together the inseam. And a lot of times on jeans, the inseam is the one that's top stitched or flat felled. These are all mock flat felled seams that we're doing. You could do a real flat felled seam, but you need a little wider seam allowance and there's more to it. This is a great way to get that jean look. It's still nice and sturdy, especially if you're overlocking or serging that seam together before you top stitch it. But the inseam is usually the one that's top stitched because it gets more stress because the legs rub together. And if you're back in the day, if you rode on a horse, if you sat in a saddle, like more things happen to the inseam that gets more stress. So it usually is top stitched. There'll be a little bit of top stitching on the hip area of the outseam also. If you do it according to theirs, you don't have to do it that way, but it does look cute, I think. So anyway, we're just going to pin this whole inseam. We're going to sew it together, then I'm going to serge it, then we're going to open it up flat and top stitch it. And I'm going to look and see if they say which direction seam allowance towards the front edge and stitch. So you press the seam towards the front of the pant, and that's where you will top stitch it. Going to do all of that stuff now. So I'm pinning together. You can see this is one long seam. Start by pinning in the center of the crotch, then come out to the outer pant leg, and then pin in between, and that'll keep you from getting too much stretch or movement in between. And I already cut off the excess of the leg so that my leg is not so wide. It's still wider than the pants that I'm currently wearing, but I'm wearing a skinny jean, and I'm just telling you, the wider pant leg is more in right now. So I'm going to leave it a little fuller, at least in this pair. In the black pair, I may go even a little slimmer. That's for later. I'm going to stitch this all up, and then I'll show you how it looks with the top stitching. Quick little close-up of the pocket detail, and this is how it looks when you fold back and stitch. So now this is ready to be flipped around and top stitched. All the seams pressed in, and now we're going to flip it over and top stitch down the top of the pocket. Okay, here's my back pocket stitched, and now I'm pinning it down. We're going to edge stitch all the way around the outer edge. Don't do the top. And then we'll come back and do a second stitch to make it even stronger, and potentially a few tacking stitches. I'll show you on theirs. Here's where they show pinning it on, the way they recommend stitching it, and then here's some tacking stitches. You can also do rivets if you want to. Here is, let me move over here, here's one finished back pocket. And you can see it's sewn at a slight angle this way. There's lots of different ways you can do this, and I probably will come back. I'm currently got my straight stitch foot on, and I think I'll come back at the very end and do a few tacking stitches just to make it nice and sturdy in the corners up here, but I think that's cute. All right, I've got to get the other one on. Okay, pockets are on. They're very cute. I'm very pleased. You can be as creative as you want. You could embroider on them, you can do a patch in them, you could do a pocket on a pocket. Like, this is the fun part of sewing, where you get to get very creative. Now that the pocket's finally on and we have the inseam sewn and top stitched, we're going to sew our outseam. So we're going to flip this around, find our side seams here. So we're going to do side seam to side seam, right sides together, a ½ inch, and then we're going to serge that. Difficult to completely top stitch the outseam as well as the inseam, especially if you have a smaller leg, because there's just not room to get it through the machine because you're sewing in a tube. If you have a really wide leg, you probably could. It might get a little bunchy at the end, but if you're careful, you could totally get yet one more top stitched seam if you want to. Otherwise, what they show on the pattern is just top stitching in the hip only through the pocket area to reinforce that and make it strong, and do a tack at the end, which is what I think I will do. So I'm going to go ahead and just straight stitch and then overlock this, and then I'm going to slip it back on. I'm not going to show that on camera, just to make sure before I overlock, just to make sure I don't want to thin the leg out anymore on the out. I know I've taken all I can out of the inside, but I may want to take a little out of the outside. So one more fitting for Stacy, and then we will be ready for the waist. All right, we have jeans put together, all top stitched except for this little outside seam right here, which I'm going to do in a bit because I'm switching my thread back and forth every single time because I'm top stitching in gold but not sewing in gold. So I'm going to wait and do that till after I get the waistband. So for the waist, you're going to take your, I cut my facing for my waist in a different fabric. So you're going to sew these together at the side seams, right sides together for both of them. And then you're going to put them together at the waist. So we're going to do right sides together, and I've marked on mine front and back so that I don't get them mixed up and accidentally sew them wrong. So here's mine. We're going to put them together at the waist, right sides together like this. And it has us sew that together. That's step 22. Then we're going to get out our elastic. It says 1/2 inch elastic. Get a pretty good firm one. You could probably go as big as 5/8 without it really showing. And you're going to go ahead and make your circle, measure your waist, cut it. They say cut it the length of your waist, because that when you overlap a little bit, it'll take a little away. It'll end up taking almost 2 inches if you overlap a full inch. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this around, and I'm going to make my little elastic circle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to zigzag that elastic circle to this seam that we just sewed, so that when we flip it around, it just pulls in that top seam only with this, which is very clever and exactly how I would have done it if I were making these choices. Then we are ready to press it, and we're going to sew it on and serge it to the pant, and our pant is done. Well, I have the hem to do, and I know they're about 1 inch too long, so I'm going to have to cut off a little bit and make that change in my pattern. Everything I make, every time I make a change to this, I go and make a change to my pattern. This one, I will say, I'll just let you know, I went ahead and left this one wide. This is a pretty wide leg. Wide leg is in right now, so I'm going to embrace it and go with a little bit wider leg. The black ones, I'm probably going to make more narrow. After I get all of this done, I'm not going to show these right away because, well, it will be right away to you, but I'm going to actually sew the black pair up next. The black pair is a super stretch gabardine. It's going to be easier to get on and off. Probably wear it more. I put a lot of work into these, and they're super cute, but because there's no lycra in this fabric at all, it's pretty difficult to get on and off. And I would just say, if you're a little bit bigger like I am, get a good denim with some lycra or spandex in it so that you have some stretch, because it's just going to be easier to pull it on and off because these don't have a zipper. But I think these are so stinking cute. I definitely will be wearing them. Anyway, back to waistband. I've got these already sewn together at the sides, so I'm going to sew them around the top at the 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to make my little elastic. So if you're following on with the steps, I've done step 21. I'm getting ready to do step 22 and 23. 23 and 24 kind of, to me, and 25 all go together because it's just quartering, which we've done lots of times, and we're going to then, they're very good at explaining everything. So they break it out in multiple steps. Can never complain about giving you more detail, because a lot of times patterns give you less. They are very good at giving you all the detail. So let's get this waistband together. If you're putting a tag in your garment in the waistband area, do it now before everything's sewn together, because it's just a lot easier. So I've put my tag in the back near the side seam of the facing side for me. Another place that would be cute to put a tag, if you wanted, would be, here's the front pocket. It would be really cute to have, so if you wanted to put a tag somewhere in this area, if you wanted your tag to show, that's another place to put it. All right, we've sewn. I've actually trimmed down a little bit. It has 1/2 inch seam allowances. I sewed down a 5/8. I wanted to lower it just a tiny bit for two reasons. One is it was a little high on me, and also
It gives me a little more fullness to get it on. I also, on the side seam here, I went from 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch on both, just to give me a little more room because I got hip. This has got to go over those hips. And then I've got my elastic quartered and ready to go, and I am seeing that there is not a lot of give in this. I'm worrying I'm going to have to tighten my elastic up, but we'll see. So now I'm ready to go to the sewing machine. I've got my wide zigzag foot, and I'm just going to zigzag right next to this. You want to just have this in the seam allowance. You don't want your elastic to dip down in here because it's going to make that seam kind of bulky. It's a little close up so you can see how it's looking when I'm stitching it. Got to give it a little pull when you go, just a little bit. That's all it takes, and you just want to keep it close to that seam so that you're always on the seam allowance and that it doesn't ever cross over when you're stitching. Focus. Okay, here's how the elastic looks on the facing side and on the jean side, and it's denim's heavy, so it kind of pulls a lot of the stretch out. I did take another almost 3 inches out of my elastic for the waist to fit a little better. Okay, my waistband is together, and I've pressed it, and I've intentionally pressed so that I pulled the facing down a little bit so the facing doesn't peek through on the other side. And now we're going to match up all of our seams. We're going to match up our side seam on our waist to our side seam of the jean, the back to the back, and we're going to just sew all the way around it and then serge all the way around it, and then we'll be ready for hem. Okay, here's my waistband pinned on all the way around. So now I'm just going to sew my 1/2 inch and serge next to it. And this will flip up and the waistband will be done. I'm going to then go ahead and come down here. I'm going to cut off 1 inch off of this hem. And then jeans usually have a double rolled hem where you roll, press, roll, and top stitch, which is what I'm going to do. Otherwise, if you want a little thinner of a hem or you want a deeper hem, more like a pant hem, you could serge that edge and fold up what you need and top stitch that in. You could have a deep hem in a jean if you want to, like it's your pant. You can do what you please. I did one more try on for hem length, and I am cutting off 2.5 inches off of the bottom of this, and then I'm going to do a rolled hem, a wide rolled hem. So I'm going to roll up 1/2 inch each time, and that's going to give me just about the perfect, I hope, or close to perfect pant length. So I'm going to take that off of these, and then I'm going to go alter my pattern. Okay, we're down to hem now. I've trimmed off what I needed to. I've pressed up my 1/2 inch, and then this is going to get turned over again. Pinned and pressed. Make sure if you press with the pin in, you don't press over those plastic pin heads. And then I will top stitch it. Everything else I've top stitched at about 1/4 inch, but this one is going to be closer to between 3/8 and 1/2, depending on where that edge comes. I want to make sure I get close to this edge but stay on the fold. My mic died, but I caught it this time. So I am down to just hemming the blue pair of pants or the blue pair of jeans I've been working on this entire time. I'm going to go ahead and make another pair in this stretch. It's really like a gabardine. It's the thing I'm concerned about though is it's very stable crosswise and very stretchy lengthwise. I don't need it to stretch lengthwise. I need to stretch around the body. So I may actually cut this out on the cross grain. I'm going to do a little research before I do. However, I'm going to wait and show you the final thing until I have both pair done. So I'll probably look different because I'm not going to sew this today. I don't think I'm going to have time to get another pair of pants made in this day. I would like to also say, as I'm finishing this up, those don't have any stretch in it, and they are hard to get on and off. Because I am such a curvy girl, I'm so much smaller waist and I'm so full in the rear and hip that it's pretty tight in the waist and yoke area up as I'm pulling it over my curvies. And then once it's up and over, it fits great, it's comfortable, I can sit in it, it's cute. But it's pretty tight coming up and down, which is sort of an issue if you're like running to the bathroom, doing a quick change, anything like that. They're not going to be easy for that. And that's the fabric choice, not the pattern. If you choose a lycra or spandex denim, gabardine, something like that that has that blend in it, they're going to be much easier to wear and get on and off, and I would recommend that. Nowadays it's easy to get. I was sewing up my stash. I think that's 10-year-old denim. Was trying to use up
what I had for my practice pair, and they're cute. I like all the detailing I did. I think they're adorable. Probably if I lost 5 pounds, they'd be a lot easier to get on and off, but we're not gonna hold our breath on that. So I'm going to make another pair, however, with the stretchy fabric, and I'm gonna look for some other denim because I just need pants, and I really do like this pattern. I think it's easy to throw together. I have another jean pattern that's a traditional jean pattern that I also want to try eventually, but at least I can get me a couple pair of pants to get me through for a while until I'm ready to tackle a pant pattern again. So next time you see me, which will be in a few minutes for you, but it'll be a little bit for me, I'll have a couple pair of pants made. I'll try them both on and I'll tell you what I think about both. Right now I can tell you I really like the pattern though. Okay friends, this is the second pair that I made out of the stretch fabric, and oh, what a difference. These are the comfiest pants I own. I love them. Okay, I'm back at the sewing machine with my black pants. I wore them all day yesterday and they're just too big. They're comfy, they're super comfy, but they're just big enough that I'm not comfortable in them. Like they don't fit quite the way I want. The waistband's too high. I'm going to actually narrow that waistband. I just don't need that deep of a waistband for my figure type. Most of these alterations that I'm telling you about are specific to me and my own needs. It's not a pattern thing. Also, the leg is still way too wide for me. It just swims around my leg. I just didn't love it, especially in this weight of fabric. If it were a really soft, drapey fabric, it would feel completely differently, but in a heavy denim, I don't like the wide leg. So I'm narrowing the leg down, and I'm going to shorten them just a tiny bit more because I don't wear a lot of heel as a rule, and they were just a little bit too long in my in the shoes that I was wearing, so in my regular shoes, like a tennis shoe or something. So all those alterations are getting ready to happen, and I'm gonna try them on again. Okay, so here's the black pant. This one is made with a stretch, and it's very stretchy. They fit a million times better as far as getting them on and off, the ease to wear them, the comfort. I slimmed the leg way down. I took almost 5 inches out of the leg to give me more of a narrow, traditional straight leg jean look. I shortened the length again another about 5/8 of an inch, just because the pants just fit differently. They feel great. They're easy to get on and off. I definitely will not be making another pair that is not stretch. The stretch is everything. The waistband's a little high on all of them, and I think I'm going to actually lower the waistband a full inch just for my waist. Like, I like how everything hits, but this is actually my true waist, so this seam is. So this is all above the waistline, even in the back. This is my true waist back here. So I think I'm just going to lower the whole waistband an inch for my next pair. I have fabric coming. You'll be seeing those. I'm not going to show how to sew it again, but I might just show the pants, especially on Instagram. Love the pattern. The pattern is a winner. I am going to do, like some of the people mentioned in my fitting video, and hack it where I'm going to make another pattern piece where it doesn't have the center back seam. I'm definitely going to make a corduroy pair, and I don't want that seam in the corduroy pair, but I love the pant otherwise. So make it. Tell me if you've made it. Tell me the things that you've done to make it your own and change it. I think these are so cute. A real winner. Great, easy pant to wear all the time. And this is a gabardine. Like this could be worn as to work because this is not even a denim. This is a stretch gabardine that I have these out of. So cute. See you next week for another fun video.